Did the Upper Kemetiu blacks revolt against the Greeks in the Ptolemaic dynasty? This research summarizes peer-reviewed data by Pesman, Vesey, and McGinn, published by the University of California, Berkeley Library Center for the Teptunis Papyri. The title of this paper is called The Great Revolt of the Egyptians, 205 to 186 BC, by Willie Clarisi, Professor of Ancient History. With the invasion of Alexander the Great in 333 BC, a Greek regime is established in Egypt, which will last into the Arab invasion 1,000 years later in 640 AD. For more than a millennium, the land of the Nile was directed from the Greek city of Alexandria, situated on the peninsula before the coast of Egypt, a bit like New York before the coast of the US. The language spoken at the royal court and used by the royal administration is different from that spoken and understood by the overwhelmingly majority of the population, stated by Clarisi. Clarisi states, although the Ptolemies were officially recognized as pharaohs by the temples and even crowned by the high priests of Memphis, although they supported Egyptian religion by subsidizing the cults and building great temples, they remained fundamentally a foreign dynasty. Starting from 246 BC, there are several native uprisings. During the most successful of these, all Upper Egypt revolted against Alexandria for almost 20 years, 206 to 186 BC, under the leadership of two native pharaohs called Haronnophris and Chaonnophris. These are some notable Ptolemaic foreigners or invaders. We first bring up Ptolemy I Soter. He was the founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty in 303 to 282 BC. Another notable and famous invader or foreigner who was born in Egypt. She was a Macedonian Greek queen, Cleopatra VII, the daughter of Ptolemy XII. Though her mother is unknown and speculated by scholars that she probably had a Greek mother, Cleopatra adopted some of the Kemetiu blacks' traditions, yet she was loyal to her foreign Greek roots and established goals of restoring Black Africa under Ptolemaic alien control. Clarisi gives a translation of Polybius Historia 5, 107.1 and 14, 107.1. The text states, the war against the Egyptians started shortly after the Battle of Raphia in 217 BC, in which Ptolemy IV, by gaining an unexpected victory on the Seleucid Antiochus III, managed to keep control over Palestine by arming the Egyptians for his war against Antiochus. Ptolemy had an excellent idea for this short time, but he did not take into account the future. Priding themselves upon that victory at Raphia, the soldiers were no longer disposed to obey orders, but they sought out a leader and figurehead in the opinion that they could command for themselves, and shortly afterwards they did indeed do so. The native Egyptians applied strategy in disarming the Greeks, as Clarisi stated, but Ptolemy IV armed the native Kemetiu blacks of the Nile Valley to fight a war for him. In victory, the Kemetiu blacks begin their revolt against the invader forces of Ptolemy. Clarisi states, the war against the Egyptians is one of the first historically documented guerrilla wars, but at the same time, it is a forgotten war because Greek historians, in the footsteps of Thucydides, considered it unfit for history. They needed clear-cut military and political turning points, and this war apparently did not give these. The Rosetta Stone, dated to 196 BC, is contemporary with the Great Revolt. It is an honorary decree in a Greek tradition dressed up by the Egyptian priests for King Ptolemy V after his victory over another native revolt in the Delta. The young king, which is Ptolemy V, is honored as a savior, a victor, and a god. The text shows that in the early 2nd century BC, the Ptolemies had not only lost control in the south, but even in part of the delta close to Alexandria. The royal victory is brought about by a long and difficult siege of the city, contradicting Polybius' statement above that there were no pitched battles, nor sieges. Again, this is a forgotten war. The Rosetta Stone duly celebrates the royal victory in the north, but does not even mention that at this very moment the whole south was in the hands of other rebels. Here, Clarisi states that while Ptolemy V celebrates his victory in the north of Kemet, the entire southern regions are in the hands of the native Kemetio blacks, whom the Greeks call rebels. The modern Egyptians claiming Kemet, country of blacks, do not belong to black Africans, simply do not hold any academic or Egyptological weight. As we are scanning part of the TT-192 tomb, we find a Negro or black African or dark complexion African as the representative of the entire southern region. The glyphs transliterate as taḥw with conventional pronunciation, and the fact that Ta means land or country with a parcel of land glyph and Shamawu with a determinative that can indicate an entire region is clear primary source evidence that the upper regions of Kemet southern lands belong to the Negro. Clarisi states, on the 3rd of Missouri, it was announced to His Majesty, Haronnophris has been captured alive in a battle against him in the year 19 on 24th and Epiph. His son was killed, the commander of the army of the empire's men, together with the leaders of the Ethiopians who fought on his side. He was brought to the place where the black Kemetiu king was punished by death for the crimes which he had committed, and so were the other criminals, those who had rebelled in a sedition which they had made. This explains that the leaders and rulers of the Ethiopians, blacks, and the Kemetiu, blacks, who fought alongside each other were captured and put to death by the Ptolemies. As if the priests wanted to say, our real king is not Xerxes, Alexander, or Ptolemy, but it is divine king Osiris. It is this divine name that the rebel pharaohs use as their throne name. Haronnophris is at the same time Horus and Osiris. Chaonnophris renders Egyptian Ankh-Nefer. Anophris still alive, or long live Anophris. In short, the names of the rebel pharaohs contain a messianic program of a return to the Golden Age. At the same time, when other peoples in the Mediterranean were also expecting their deliverance through a Messiah. Not only the Jews who eagerly awaited for a king, but also the Romans. And as it is clear from Virgil's 4th eclogue celebrating the birth of a child in a Saturnia Aetus, the Golden Era. Egypt belonged to the same world where nationalistic feelings were expressed through religious imagery. What we have here in these amazing statements by Clarisi, he is stating that the rebel pharaohs actually developed names that were contained in cartouches to show that the invader rulers are not the real rulers, and we are the real rulers with the correct names of black African Kemet. Clarisi also makes mention that the Ptolemaic officials and the Greeks actually describe these rebel pharaohs and their family members as being black or dark complexion. As we read here, it states, thou bastard, about 30 years small with honey-colored complexion, round face and a scar on the right cheek, with her guardian, Apollonius, son of Apollonius, about 40 years of medium stature, with honey-colored complexion, bald forehead, protruding ears, and a scar on his forehead. On the left side of the street, Arsenio Erigitus. The passage concerns Dacian, 18 years small with dark complexion, a round face recognizable by several scars. As we find here, we see that the result of the rebellion, the result of the revolution, that the native kings and the native people of Ethiopia, Sudan, and Upper Kemet, their families were put in jeopardy and put in slavery and were sold. The Ptolemaic officials and the Greeks described these family members as being dark complexioned, black. What's interesting about these statements by Clarisse is that, as we see here, the Greek officials are describing three people. The first person they are giving is actually a Syrian named Tabastus, who is the daughter of Socrates, which is a Syrian, and she is 30 years old. And also she is honey-colored complexion. They are also describing a guardian of hers named Apollonius, and he is described as medium stature with honey-colored complexion. Then they describe the 18-year-old Egyptian named Dacian, and Dacian was small with dark complexion, black, 18 years old, a round face, and recognizable by several scars. Clarisse states, in 197 BC, Tabastus, daughter of Socrates, declares possession of a young Egyptian slave, Dacian, whom she had bought from the fisc on a public auction for 500 drachma, to which was added a 20% purchase tax. Notwithstanding her Egyptian name, Tabastus is clearly at home in a Greek military setting. Dacius has been enslaved as a result of the revolt in the land, so the Greeks were very angry at the native black dark complexion Kemetu of Upper Kemet, the south. They were upset that they challenged them for 20 years, and from this the Greeks enslaved their family and they killed their leader, but their legacy lives forever in the hearts of black Africans.